Good afternoon. In accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, we're conducting this meeting in a hybrid model, both virtually and in person. The Public Works Commission is holding this meeting on January 11th, 2023 at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Zoom platform and in person, in accordance with the town's policy directive and guidelines issued on April 1st, 2020, and amended on May 7th, 2020. I ask that all Public Works Commissioners, town staff, and presenters joining us via Zoom today to activate their video and mute their microphones unless they have something to say or are participating in committee dialogue. For members of the public, when I open the meeting to public comment, in order to be recognized, please use the raise hand option in Zoom or use *9 by phone. If you are recognized, please state your name and address. This meeting is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on the town's website. Call to order. I, David DeLong, hereby call this meeting to order. We'll start with the attendance of the commissioners. As all commissioners are unable to attend in person, please reply and state if you are present and whether you're attending in person or remotely. Jeff Vassar.
Present.
James Terry.
Present in person.
Sven Weber.
Present.
Dave DeLong, present virtually. Andrea Solomon.
Present in person.
Great, thank you. Before moving ahead in today's agenda, in the interest of reducing the impact on any inadvertent technology upset resulting from remote participation, I would like to request that, if acceptable, Andrea Solomon assume the role of acting chair for the remainder of the meeting, since I'm remote. Andrea?
Right. Very good, Andrea. You will take it from here. Yeah.
Alan, could we move the mic down? We can't hear Andrea.
Okay. Yeah, if you can speak up as well, that'll be helpful.
I move that we approve the minutes of, December 14th, 2022.
Second.
All right, so we will vote to approve Jeff Vassar,
Yes.
James Terry,
Aye.
Sven Weber,
Aye.
Dave DeLong,
Aye.
Andrea Solomon, aye. So next, review the calendar. I don't think much has changed since last time.
I will highlight, we have been sort of juggling a need and timing for, some of you may notice, the solid waste recycling rate hearing that has been tentatively, identified, but we're not in a position right now where we think it's necessary, appropriate. We don't have all the information. We have time to work that out. There is a hearing for rate adjustment once a year, but there is some flexibility in when we do that. So that's just for those of you who may have noticed.
So until there's a rate hearing, the current rates will remain in place.
Exactly.
On the calendar.
Dave, maybe, I know there is, it's not sort of one of the agendas for the commission, but there is a commission chair breakfast that is does occur. Dave, I don't know if you want to speak to that issue because you've been attending those, correct?
Sure. Yes, I have. I've been attending in person, and I did one virtually just a couple of weeks ago. These are the breakfasts that, for those of you who might not know, where all the chairs of all the town committees and commissions come together. It's pretty interesting to see the collection of leadership in the town. I cannot go. The next one is next Wednesday morning, the 18th, at 8 a.m. You could attend by Zoom. I cannot attend. I'm bringing my wife home from the hospital that morning after her knee surgery. So that would be a bad choice of activities. So if anybody else would like to attend, they're welcome to attend in my stead. They often ask you to present, just informally for 30 seconds to kick in what the commission has been working on, what issues are up, in the department. But it's pretty light lifting. But if someone wants to attend, they're welcome to. And Alan, I'll let you negotiate that, because I'm sure everybody wants to go.
And it really is, it's not too formal, so it's a good opportunity. If you haven't done it, at least it can give you a flavor if you're interested. Might be as vice chair, something you might want to do so you can get familiar with it.
Okay,
Um,
and it's at 8?
It's 8 AM and it's a hybrid, so there's an option. We'll make sure you get the information to join remotely if interested and get the details.
Okay,
Okay? Great. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
all right, so moving on to D1, 185 Central Street Water and Sewer Appeal Continuance. We'll do an update as to the legal opinion on the issue. We discussed it at length last time. So I just want to thank Alan for consulting with the town council so quickly that we can hopefully have a solution today that everyone is amenable to. And take it from here. the update.
Sure, very briefly, again, this is, it was a long discussion. The interest was from the commission to get some input from council as far as our, the language in our rules and regulations and how it may, be relevant to this particular appeal. And there were two issues. There was that, and there's also the interest in, the process. And I think, part of the role of the commission is to look at things and identify needs or opportunities to, clarify. And I think your role, and you served it well, was to, flag the fact that there was some ambiguity and confusion. I think, staff recognizes this, part of our takeaway from the last meeting was, looking at the opportunity to do two things. We evaluate our rules and regulations, see if it's timely and appropriate to update, maybe not just for this particular issue, but it's been, 20 years or so since it's been last vetted, as well as, understanding our design specifications, as well as some of the details. Details are sheets that might make things clearer to, the general public or even contractors who are interested in doing work. So acknowledging that to my recollection, the Public Works Commission had never adopted water sewer regulations in the past. The commission has adopted engineering design standards in the engineering division. So we think for consistency, it might make sense to bring that forward as well. So the system's working in that you kind of flagged, an area of need. I think we are particularly sensitive to a lot of interest with ADUs, and we've talked about that over the last, few years. So it's a good opportunity for us to do that. So we intend to do that as kind of a standalone to come back to the commission. But I think the issue at hand is primarily the specific appeal. And the other question was, can staff work with the owner to understand, is there some other, resolution? I think we've come to sort of had a good conversation with Mr. Hart, sidebar, understand some of the areas that he had flagged, which I think were helpful, instructive going forward. But really his interest is his project, and that's what he was sort of volunteering before. So provided you with a kind of assessment of some verbiage in the rules and regulations that did flag the ambiguity in a way that if the commission was interested, could, be, a concession as far as, not having a resident have to, litigate or take legal action. The whole idea is that what can the commission do to de-escalate something? We don't want residents having to take legal action unless there was really, a reason for it. But so that was sort of the outcome. And basically, I think the memo kind of stands alone, to the commission. I did share it with the appellant, so he was aware of what was said. And really, if you have any questions, about that, but that's basically the outcome.
What is the anticipated timing on sewer, the rules and regulations?
It would be within months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the most important part is to have clarity for citizens. What is the expectation Public Works has towards work they're planning to do?
Mhm.
That cannot, nobody is running in a similar situation again.
Correct.
Yeah. And then, one question for the applicant is just, you're okay with the work you have done now in the agreement? You're going direction to, or?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the concession that I kind of offered in my appeal, which I'm still willing to honor, and I understand it's part of the proposed grant of appeal, or whatever the appropriate language is that we will rehabilitate the sewer that's there. Of course, we'll report the findings to the Water and Sewer Division, and if there's an actual breakage or issue where it can't be rehabilitated, it will be on us to actually replace that stem. We offered that because we understand that that's in the interest of town and protecting the town's wastewater, and we're happy to do it. And so I think, you know, we would be satisfied with a grant of our appeal with upholding that condition. And we would like to continue to do the work, which I think the director has been willing and amenable to, given the timeline of the appeal, is not waiting on the standard kind of time frame that is open trench kind of guideline, which is December 1st, April 1st. For various reasons. This works well here, especially because we wouldn't be cutting into the road unless there is a problem with the sewer, and then we'll coordinate closely with the division to make sure that that's appropriate. So, yeah, I think this makes a lot of sense, and I just encourage the division, the board, as Alan has offered, is to visit these rules and regulations and think about clarity for citizens, and think about making it predictable, and also kind of for lack of a better term, fair in how it applies across different lots and different situations, which may take a little time, but it's not a little rocket science to figure it out.
Thank you.
Did you have anything? Added
No.
questions?
Oh.
Andrea, I'm gonna ask you to speak up, just
Okay.
because, you know,
Sure.
the sensitivity of the speaker, that's all.
Anything from you, Dave? You're all
Thank
set?
you for asking. No, I'm glad to hear we seem to be aligned a lot clearer than the last meeting. And yes, no, I'm fine. thank you.
Okay. So I'll move this forward if someone wants.
Let me make the motion.
All right.
Okay. I move that the Public Works Commission approve the application for water and sewer service to the proposed accessory garage structure, the property of 185 Central Street, as originally submitted by the applicant, with the following condition. Number one, the existing 91-year-old sewer line shall be rehabilitated or replaced from the primary residence building foundation to the public sewer main in Central Street. Number two, internal plumbing, both water and sewer service, within the building envelope and the proposed accessory garage structure shall be subject to the review and approval of the building commissioner or his designee, and any stipulated conditions of approval stipulated by the building department. Number three, internal plumbing, both water and sewer service, interconnections within the building envelope of the primary residential structure shall be subject to the review and approval of the building commissioner or his designee, and any stipulated conditions of approval stipulated by the building department. Number four, this action be formalized in an approval letter that shall be served as a drain layer excavation permit to be issued by the Director of Public Works, which shall also include the allowance for this work to be performed outside the usually accepted construction season.
Second.
Okay, so I'll do a roll call vote. Chad Basser,
Yes. Approve all three.
James Terry,
Aye.
Sven Weber,
Aye.
Dave DeLong,
Aye.
Andrea Solomon, aye. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for your
Appreciate
time.
your time.
We'll move on to scenic roads regulation review. You can update us.
Yeah, so I would ask Steve Dukran, town engineer, to come up to the table. I also know Aaron McCloskey, Highway Ground Superintendent, and more importantly, the tree warden, who is in the audience, and depending on the conversation, Aaron, you're welcome to come up, but if you see fit. Basically, I thought Steve has done a lot of the yeoman's work on background information. We provided some information, I don't know the best way forward, but this is our opportunity to kind of listen to the commission, so we can provide a response to the planning board comments. Again, they are responsible for the drafting of regulations to go with the scenic road bylaw. It's under their authority, but at town meeting, it was clear, and during the town meeting prep, clear interest to ensure that Public Works voice was, a part of the drafting of the regulation. So we had one round of discussions. Some of our comments were forwarded along, incorporated into a revised draft. And then Steve sort of called out some of the higher level areas of interest. So Steve, I don't know if you want to take it from here,
Yeah.
or, how you want to.
Okay, good evening, Commissioners. Steve Whitman, Town Engineer. So, as Alan mentioned, we got the second round, a revised version of the draft regulations from the senior planner and or town planner. And we spent some time reviewing those or that. And I got to tell you, it's been difficult in round two, more difficult than it was in round one, because normally when you review a set of regulations, they apply to outside parties, contractors, private entities, and so on. And you're reviewing with the interest of protecting the town. But with these, you're trying to do the same thing, but a lot of them apply to the town itself. So you're kind of awkward, very difficult position to try and come up with what's the right solution for the town. So I gotta let you know that. The other thing that hasn't happened is we haven't had a meeting with the planning division. We should, so that we can try to be on the same page. As you would see, some of the questions were they needed, further information or clarification. So everybody's busy, and I suppose that's why that hasn't happened yet. But hopefully we should get something, a meeting together, get some of these out on the table and resolve before it goes to the planning board and do the final adoption of these regulations. So we try to work on that. But so we created this memo and we highlighted the ones that we thought, the items that we thought that could discuss some more with you. And I wouldn't go through everyone, but I'll go through the ones that I think stand out a bit. And stop me along the way if you want to further discuss or have any questions. So we start with the first one, the 1.1, the authority. The last time when we sent the comments back, we talked about the different bylaws and policies and so on that exist. And there are going to be ambiguities and conflicts and contradictions and so on. So we'd like to have the town council review them and clear up some of those. So that's been presented to the planning board to have such done. And so I hope the opportunity does exist for the town to have that done. All right, so that's the first.
Steve, can I just interject? It's my understanding by observing their meetings, if they are in agreement, that that's an important aspect. So I think that's, something we'll be, kind of working with the town manager as well. But my sense is they were amenable to that, understood the reason. I also want to go back to, not to steal any of Jeff Thatcher's thunder, but he had raised the question on how does this comport with our roads policies? I think we'll be using that as the same opportunity to cross-reference, as well, so I think that's something we don't want to lose sight of. And it's on our radar.
The first thing in growth policy, I should bring it up, it says, we don't think that we should do a scenic road bylaw.
That's from 1994.
Yeah, it was revised in '99, but it didn't address that specific item.
We'll have council involved.
Okay.
So who's making that request then? We are doing that?
We have made the request.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first go around, this was something that we flagged with the commission. We presented it and they were talking about some of these comments from Public Works. And that was one that I had heard an acknowledgement that that made sense. So, we will, again, reinforce that, I think, but.
So, but we can't do the request to town manager directly.
We're gonna go to the planning board.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Yeah, I don't think it's all that clear. How the request is going to get to the town manager.
With the meeting that planning board had, there was a discussion and I thought affirmation to the planning director that this was important. So we'll follow up on that and include it in writing.
All right. So I'll jump into the third one, 1.4.1, cutting and removal of trees. The original comment we had was to add that the removal of trees be determined by the tree warden, who's an employee of Public Works. They didn't see the need to emphasize an employee of Public Works. So the memo, I think we didn't address it properly in the memo, but what I want to point out, because we have to correct this as we send this to the planning board, we want to recommend that the wording be changed to as removal of trees as determined by the tree warden in consultation with the highway and ground superintendent, because we think without having that superintendent involved, the interest of Public Works will not be, preserved.
Okay. And to be clear, there's no requirement the tree warden falls within Public Works. It just so happens to be that's how we structured it. So in the event there was a tree warden for even acting, we want them to work in sync with our highway grounds. Who would do the work.
Sorry, did you go over 1.3?
I'm skipping that over that because I didn't know that. But if you have a comment on that, then.
Yeah, I wonder why they don't see the need to specify the right of way. There are so many rights of way
Right.
in town. This applies to public right of way. The town's public right of way, correct?
Right.
Not the state, not a utility company. I don't know, what was there? Did they have a reason for not wanting to include that?
I didn't, so I think by my explanation now, I think they will consider it. Yeah.
Okay, good.
The next one is an important one, the definition of what is a stone wall.
Yeah.
And, I'm not sure that people know what is, but I think for it to be a scenic road, there ought to be, it's been around for a while. And whatever a while is, it should have some kind of.
So it appears that they are willing to explore those things.
Okay. Yeah, it's not easy, but it's important, I think.
And let's think about the future, and that's really what we're about. You'll look, there was a project recently in Lexington Road, where a new stone wall was installed. It's private. And now it's been surveyed and the stone wall is clearly in private property. So I think the reality is if there's any stone walls, if they exist and they're historic, then that's what we inherit. But moving forward, there'll be very clear delineation of any new structures and, which would be helpful.
The thing that gets me is that I live on a road that might someday be nominated College Road. And there are spots where stones are contiguous, and there are spots where stones over the years have just, fallen away. And, they could be 3 or 4 feet between them. So you know, what is a stone wall? I think something that's very important to be able to have Public Works know when they do work on the road, because they may be doing some work on our road sometime. And if stones are close to the pavement way, what are they gonna do with them? Nothing, you know. Yeah, what's a road, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, if in fact that road ever gets nominated and approved.
It definitely the current definition is saying nothing. Yeah, if you read the current version.
Right. I did highlight in the memo, the part about exclusion of retaining walls. And I know Jeff was you who had interest in that. I think we want to continue to make sure that's addressed, because retaining walls typically on the side of a road are there for a reason.
Yeah.
It is holding up the embankment or it's holding up the road.
Yeah.
And if it's an historic wall that's not built with any kind of standard, especially today's engineering standards, and should there be a problem, you know, you just cannot replicate that. Historic wall. So I think that needs to be understood.
But would there be a process? I know another place in here you talk about looking at affordability of alternatives. I would
Yes.
wonder or suggest in that case, it might be worth looking at the cost of alternatives. Because something more closer representing what's there now might be affordable,
Might be.
or it might be totally, anything's affordable if you throw enough money at it.
You're right.
It might not be
Right.
realistic.
If it's someone else's money.
It may not be realistic.
Right. You know, again, sitting on our side, the town side, you know, we use this the language sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
Cost doesn't matter because it's the law.
Yeah.
But when it comes to us, and we're spending taxpayers' money, it will matter to the taxpayers, which is for a section of the community.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I don't know. It's a hard thing to put the number to, what's affordable.
Right. It is.
You know, but I guess, we hope that the education group will in some way, find it, you know, to make a decision.
Yeah.
You know, so,
But 1.4.6 in the current planning board version is more or less mute. It just starts the sentence, stone wall repair and maintenance shall mean the. And then it finishes.
all right. So the new version, I'm reading, send the new draft.
That's what was in the material, yeah, the
Yeah.
latest draft. There's nothing after this, it's a half sentence.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Yeah, you're correct. So I took the liberty of adding here, not just the definition.
Yeah.
But adding some discussion to that. And I said, we are hoping, Public Works is hoping that when they complete this definition, they're referring to a standard of work.
Mhm.
If you're building a historic stone wall, what a standard would be, right? It meets certain criteria. What we're hoping that it's not, is that it will set up a standard for us when we're building stone walls. I'm talking about Public Works here, that it has to meet these rigorous measures.
Yeah.
Right? That's one thing. And the second thing we're hoping that wouldn't enter into their definition is that if a stone wall falls on its own accord, because of some naturally occurring issue as well, that they don't place some unreasonable mandate for us to put it back as it was. You know, especially right away. Because as you know, Public Works is always constrained when it comes to resources.
Yes.
Right? So, yeah, so we don't know what they're coming up with, but we're gonna make sure we get to them.
Okay, that's important.
All concerned. Yeah. All right, so that's that. If I go down to 2.1, the application. And this is the application for if someone wants to do some work to impact trees and stone walls on scenic routes, they have to fill out this application, which I think they've developed a form as such, but they will be doing that. I wrote a mouthful there. You know, but I think. But the last time is what I really want to point out. If things would have happened. Someone believes that they're working on their property, the stone is on their property. Right, the trees are on their property, and they would remove the trees, alter the stone wall, because we fully believe. And we don't know, how does that get to the town's attention? You know, go around policing these things, do you wait for the neighbor to call? So that's not addressed. And then when it does, when you do get, when the town's attention is gotten, how do you determine that this is a case of the right of way being violated? You know, so I don't have the answer. I'm just saying that's lacking.
Yes.
I mean, in practice, in any permitted situation, whether it's a building permit, the right of permit, you always have to wonder, you know, how do you get? How do you get to know that something is happening, and then what do you do about it?
So, but they need a permit to do the work, even if it's 100% on their property or not? No. Okay.
Listen, I think we're, Steve was saying,
Yeah, yeah.
that if someone did something on what they thought
Well,
was
yeah, but
private
they
property,
best
but
believe.
someone else thinks it's in the public way
Yeah.
also, who determines it, who pays for figuring that out? And
So how do we do that?
We're not interested in having public works have to do that.
How do we do that with trees? Because often the question is the tree on the town side or is the tree on the private side?
Aaron McCloskey, you wanna just come up here so we can hear you at least and record it? And it will be on a permanent recording. So did you hear the question?
Yes, how do you determine if it's the town side or the?
Yeah, because it's a similar situation.
For the
Someone
public
could do
shade.
work on a tree, believing it's on their property, and then you show up and say, "Oh, bad guy." So,
Yeah, so public shade trees are defined by any tree, it's within the public right of way, right? And that's those are the only type of trees the tree warden has jurisdiction over. Tree warden does not have jurisdiction over any private trees, technically park trees, cemetery trees, or any other type of tree in town. For it to be considered a public shade tree, any portion of that tree at the base of the flare is within the town right of way, it's a public shade tree and protected. And
but how does the owner know then? So is that determined?
So it's on, the responsibility is kind of on the property owner. Before they take any action on any tree that's questionable, they should contact the town, and I would go out, or the tree warden would go out and determine whether or not it's a public shade tree. And the way we do that, another number of things. I look for bounds in the field. So, you know, either granite stone bounds, there might be a survey marker, a pin. I'll ask a homeowner if they have a plot plan or survey from when they purchased the property or where they did any major construction. I'll look on our town GIS files or the building department to see what kind of flat files we have on file. If I can't find anything right there, I can sometimes locate from either an abutting property that has something on file, take some measurements, or we will go out and we'll do a survey. Really, that's the best way, is to get a licensed land survey to come out and do a survey and determine where the edge of the right of way is, and if any portion of that tree is within it, it's a public shade tree considered. So the onus is on a homeowner, and really, and then what in de facto, as you know, tree wardens are trained if you're unsure, it's considered a public shade tree.
So is there any language in the regulation with respect to that burden on the owner to determine that can be copied or used for the similar situation with the stone walls?
We could put something in there. I don't think there's anything.
We
in there
could,
right
we can
now.
recommend something. Let's be clear, it's
Yeah.
not us, it's the
Yeah, but-
planning board, but a
But because it's
recommendation.
just the
Exactly. Same idea.
kind of
Yeah.
problem.
And Aaron, I think also the issue is those people, and this is something we deal with regularly. I didn't know, you know, how was I supposed to? How would I even know this? You know, my kid's sick, my husband's traveling. Why are you harassing me, really? So that's you see these situations occur and
Yeah, it does happen.
and it does, and it will happen. So I think we need to sort of acknowledge that's part of the,
Agreed, and most of the time,
The
it's genuine,
challenge.
they didn't know, right?
Yeah.
People don't know. A lot of times homeowners are first-time home buyers and are familiar with the process, they just kind of dive right into it. And they find out, there's a lot of hard lessons learned throughout the process, right? And over time and after the fact. So that's oftentimes will show up and they're concerned about a tree and, hey, what do I do about the tree, right? Most people will call the town just asking the question, and we're there to provide guidance. And I can tell you how many times I've been to houses and give them advice on their, the trees and the process, and not only, our process, public shade tree, process, but also the tree protection bylaw, private property trees, things like that. Just give them a whole kind of rundown. Most folks don't know.
If you get there and you're, looking for bounds or plans or whatever, and it's kind of hard to tell. And do you have the ability to say they have to do a survey, or do you recommend it? Courtesy if they decide to do it or not, or do we have the ability to make them do it?
I don't have the ability to make anybody do anything, but if I don't know that, but I would say that if we don't know, I would say then I cannot take any action on the tree, and I consider it a public shade tree. So basically it stops. So if a homeowner comes and says, I want to take this tree down from my house, he tell me if it's my tree or town tree, and I can't determine it, I'm gonna consider it, all right, it's a public shade tree, unless otherwise determined. A lot of times I can tell just by, usually I can find a bound somewhere down the street, take measurements off a couple of streets, find some, we're getting pretty creative. Get a survey is the worst case scenario, and then it takes a couple weeks and nothing happens until then.
So then it's documented so that you're protected.
Oh, yeah, everything is documented. We have a work order management system, every tree that we visit, we write up notes.
So there's a lot of experience with shade trees, and its predecessors and so on, so you kind of know what to do, right? This is kind of default set of actions or reactions. With stone walls, we don't. This is new territory, and the fact that people don't know, as Alan is saying, who's going to make the first step? I would have wished that statutorily, if it's allowed to have control by the bylaw over all stone walls in the woods. So no one can touch a stone wall until they do an application.
That would be the cleanest, yeah.
But I don't know if the state law would allow putting that in place.
Does anything get mentioned in the deed to the property? Like, when you buy a property that talks about you're in the zoning district. Is there any requirement for going forward that it say you're along a scenic byway? Do we know if that has ever been brought up?
No, that's probably a good thing to.
I don't know how I can enforce that.
Have it
I don't
recorded.
know if it's part of the.
Well, I think zoning is typically like an overlay, right? So the plot, the lot itself would be within the zone. But a scenic road, the limits of the scenic road are the limit of the right of way.
Yeah, I'm not. saying
Private
it's-
property is not itself considered part of
Well,
it.
that's true. It doesn't apply to their property. They're just fronting along. there.
Correct.
Good point.
goes back to the conundrum of we're regulating the town.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really it, right? So it's.
And it's, we laugh, but it also, we're familiar with the tree, shade tree issues. But it really isn't, Public Works is lots of responsibility in the right of way.
Mhm.
But this is under the authority of the planning board by statute.
Yeah.
So it's,
That's a big loophole that I don't think people at town meeting understood. There much was made over the beautiful vistas with the stone walls. But those vistas don't include the public right of way. They're all private property. So I wonder if people, when they continue to see stone walls cut into because they're on private property, are gonna wonder, hey, did we vote for a scenic bylaw that was supposed to cover this? But it was never supposed to cover that. And I think that was a very, I saw the disconnect in the comments that happened at town meeting, and there was just no way to correct that. There was, Public Works was never called upon again to comment on it after our presentation at town meeting. And so people continue to stand up and fight for those vistas, which this does not cover. So I think that's something that will continue to disappoint people as we go forward with this.
One of the things that reminds me of that, when we do the documentation and have the discussions, these things go on record, because I tell you, something is gonna happen in the future that, you'll come back and say, yeah, we did bring this up,
Mhm.
you know.
That'll be very important, you know.
And is that, I think you had also, under 1.46, you had made the comment. CPW is further requesting a reasonable timeline to be established so that we can prepare for future roads that might be added to this. And that's important because when you look back in 1994 and 2006, when scenic roads bylaw was brought up, there was so much discussion between citizen groups and the planning department and Public Works and the Public Works Commission. There were memos back and forth, talking, discussing, listening to others about whether or not this would be a good thing or a bad thing, and it's all documented. But this time, we didn't find out until it was a warrant article, and we had very little time to prepare a response, or to get the people who may be interested in knowing more about it to even listen to the other side of that story, beyond the spiffy presentation that was given over and over. So I hope that they agree that that is a very important thing, to have lots of discussion before we get to this point, because now we're at this point where we're going through this line by line, and it's very hard on the planning board. I think their comments reflect that. It's a lot to consider, and it could have all been considered before we even voted on it.
Okay, we move on.
Sure.
I'm not gonna skip any, Jeff, just in case you have.
You can skip it. I got it.
Yeah.
all notes, yeah.
So the next one is the application, and let's see, let's see, how does the plan work? Okay, we just covered that one. Next one is the application fee, 2.1.3. And according to the planner, application fees are only waived by the town manager. But I'm thinking if the application fee can be waived at the time of the regulations. For public projects, that is, for public projects.
Sure.
Wait a minute. So the town is paying itself an application fee?
As of now, we have
Determined. I mean, that's why we will this is our comment. We don't want to,
yeah, unless waived by the town manager.
yes. And again, this is a general fund, supported operation, when we do our right of way improvements, whatnot.
Okay. Under 2.3, considerations of decision, and this is on the application. So I said there that the revised document does, incorporate some of what we asked, but others that they're still considering are the town's vision and master plan for transportation mobility, affordability, as mentioned earlier, and then 3, threats of significant damage to land and improvements. Those are very important to us, and we want to keep emphasizing that they consider those.
So Steve, help me with what you mean by threats of significant damage to land and improvements. The third word there.
Okay, so should you have an item like a retaining, like a wall it's threatening to fall, right? It's nice, it's beautiful, but it's falling, it's going to fall, and it's going to damage nearby property or something of that nature. We want the ability to, or even the homeowner, right, wants to be able to make a decision to remove the wall, and that be considered important in their decision making.
If you have specific examples on the 8 or 9 roads that are in there, you have some pictures, can get some pictures of it. I think that would be very helpful in making your point.
Okay. I didn't want to mention retaining walls, but that specifically is for retaining walls as well.
Right.
It's
You mentioned that other places.
Right.
So I don't.
because not on one of the scenic roads, but across within the past year, a retaining wall that was show signs of failure. Obviously, we would like to go out there and replace it when we
Right,
have
well,
the
even if it's a road that's a potential for a future scenic road, where you've had to do work, and the question is, would you be able to do it without having to put an application in and go through all the months? Because the amount of time, 45 days for a meeting and then
21 days.
21 days after that for a decision.
Yeah, I was gonna point out.
Yeah, you could lose the whole working session season.
But also to be told that you gotta do an exact replica of the existing wall. and that-
Okay.
That's your portability.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if nothing else, we're gonna send this to the planning department so that they can listen to our meeting.
Yeah.
Maybe they will.
That timeline though, I mean, that ends up being 9 weeks. So I don't even know if I can completely comprehend what that would do. If you had to put on hold the timing and budget of a project for 9 weeks to wait for a decision.
Mhm.
In a way that would you'd probably have to postpone the project. Which it would be a shameful irony if the end result,
Project go up.
yeah, but the end result of having your road on be called a scenic road would be that it never gets worked on it. That would be like, not, I think, what was meant by this adoption of this bylaw.
Well, if we're planning for rain, let's assume we look at these things ahead of time, but you never know what may crop up at the last minute. And glad Alan's back. You guys may know the answer, but if the planning board makes a decision that something needs to be, we're doing a roadway project, something needs to be replicated, that's gonna cost $50,000. It's not in our budget. How can they require us to spend 50,000 of money we don't have? Doesn't have to go back to town council to get that money.
Presumably that road would deteriorate. Since it wouldn't be rehabilitated.
But what if it wasn't part of the original request? Because now they're determining that they want something more than we.
It wouldn't need to go to council. You probably, if anyone, go to the town manager,
Okay.
who has some discretion. And we'd also work at Public Works budget, figure out, can there be some juggling? That's generally how something like that would be resolved.
The council meeting, select board, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
Can you go on?
Yep.
All right, 2.5.1 exemption. Or exemptions. So we asked that an exemption for traffic safety improvements be added to the regulations. And they're correct when they ask that this should be further defined because anything can be viewed as a traffic improvement.
Yeah.
Right. But there is, which we want to do now. So I put an example there, like for a field guardrail or roadside barriers. If that should happen and have an immediate hazard, we want to be able to go in there and correct the hazard the correct way too, right? Correct standards.
So is the point there, Steve, that a guardrail needs to be a certain distance off of the paved road and the stone wall might be there?
Exactly.
And that's the issue, that you couldn't put a guardrail appropriately placed if there is already a stone wall there. Okay,
That's one.
Okay.
One example of what impact could be.
I can't, that's important that they understand why we're raising concerns about certain points.
Sorry, Steve, in that case, I know a little bit to be dangerous. If the current standards say the guardrail has to be so many feet from a travel lane, and the current one wasn't, it was installed before that standard came to be.
Right.
And if we can't install it as per current standards, is there a waiver? I mean, is there even any option?
That's
for
what we
them?
asked. That's what we asked in the
Okay.
exemption.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, then we're talking about something that's being done for safety of motorists site and cyclists.
pedestrians.
Pedestrians.
And 2.5.1, that was B, and this one is E. Exemption for temporary removal and replacement of stone walls within 30 days. And requiring a 14-day notification to planner. I'm gonna read it out here. Planning disagrees with giving CPW exception on these requirements for removal of trees and stumps, installation of signage, and the maintenance of stone walls. All of these may require immediate attention and cannot meet the notification requirement. Further, the maintenance of stone walls is to address failing or failed walls. The scenic roads bylaw was adopted to control the willful destruction or tearing down of stone walls. That's all they introduced the whole bylaw. And we see that Public Works efforts to maintain the stone walls is contrary to the bylaw's intention. Just want to make that clear.
I'm missing something here. It's
All right.
not unusual for me.
That's a good point.
The first sentence, I don't understand what that means. Exemption for temporary removal and replacement of stone wall within 30 days and requiring a 14-day notification. What triggers the 30 days? What triggers the 14 days? What is that in relationship to?
All right, so we go back.
Maybe
to
we don't know that. Oh, it's maybe.
We have to go back to the reading.
reading.
The 14 days is. Town planner is notified 14 days before the work begins.
Temporary removal of stone wall in the same location with the same materials for 30 days.
So they're asking.
Oh, it's within 30 days of the town planner saying, okay. Is that right? Is that what they're saying?
And the same version of this in 30 days. Yes,
Okay.
so you have
It all-
14-day notification, and then you have 30 days
To get it done.
do it.
Okay, thank you.
And we're saying no notification. We want to do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Any more questions on that? Okay. Then enforcement 4.1. Application restoration requirement. So the revised version lacks restoration requirements for unpermitted removal of stone wall. They spent some time on violation for tree removal, but nothing for stone
There's
wall.
nothing much to it. So Aaron, I'm gonna wait, get you involved here. There's a fee of $375 per inch of diameter of the original tree, and they have to put in a replacement tree that's just as good. That's fairly expensive based on some of the trees that you've got out there.
It is, but that's a number that they can't, that I'd say the planning board or the planning department can't come up with.
Okay.
We were not consulted on that cost.
Do you think that's a reasonable
So
charge?
I would say that Mass General Law, Chapter 87 is public shade tree law. And in that law, it states the penalty for damage to a public shade tree is $500. The law is also very old.
Okay.
Doesn't matter on the size.
Correct. Local municipalities have adopted additional penalties and fees for damage of public shade trees. Concord is not. I'm in the works of putting together some type of policy. Will be
That's my next one. So we just default to the state.
correct.
500.
Correct. So, in this case, this is, I think more in line with, the tree protection bylaw, which is applicable to trees on private property. It's triggered when there's, construction, renovation, demolition that exceeds 250 square feet on private property. That's where, if you read that, there's a calculation they use to evaluate trees, and a property owner that's proposing to remove trees on private property to trigger another tree protection bylaw to change the tree fund or replace an equivalent amount PDH worth of trees on our property. So this is more in line with that.
They say at the stump, so.
It could get very
it's
expensive.
20 inches here and it's 15 inches here, so I'm gonna cut it down right up here.
Also, so
Nobody-
DVH, so the standard is DVH, it's
Yeah, but
DVH,
they-
diameter
they-
per inch is the standard, that should, that.
Yeah.
That's not,
They
the
should,
stump is not a standard that is used in the
Correct.
industry,
they should use DVH. Yep.
so.
Can I say something?
Okay.
Aaron, I think I'm following this conversation. I just want to make sure that we're not setting a fee so low, or whoever, the planning board, not setting a fee so low that it's just like irrelevant to some developer or some owner to say, hey, I'll fork up $500 to kill that tree. Did I hear you say that you're in the process of potentially revising those numbers? Revising that number, or suggesting a revision of that fee for damage to a public shade tree?
Yeah, correct. So I'm in the process of trying to create a policy, a draft policy for future consideration by the committee that addresses fees as well as some other things, just the process in town for removal of shade trees and
Okay,
penalties associated with it.
having
Other
put it,
Massachusetts have done that. We don't have that in place, so we kind of,
right,
standard is
Yeah.
defaulting to Mass General Law, Chapter 87, which is a
Right.
max.
well, it'd be great in your non-existent spare time to get that, to get that updated, because it does, having put in a couple trees in the last couple of years, I know how expensive they are for anything, and you want to make sure that there's no incentive there, or that there's adequate disincentive to.
Yeah, I would say that while there is a fee associated, it's a tree, if it were to be removed, it still has to pass the process. And all it takes at a public shade tree hearing for me to not authorize a tree removal is to receive one objection. And then I will not approve the removal of the tree, and that's the way that it's written. Somebody could appeal my decision and go to the select board to overturn it, but, I think you're gonna find more often, not whenever it's related to the trees at least, that if it gets to the situation where it goes before a planning board, it goes before a public tree for hearing, and even if, the hearings are combined or however it's determined that they're held, you're probably gonna get at least one person to show up that objects, and then the tree's not going down, regardless of how much money a property owner wants to pay to remove the tree.
Okay, thank you.
So, but okay, that is the scenario where the property owner wants to remove the tree. What is the scenario where you come in and say the tree is a public shade tree, it's safety hazard, it's just dying, and you as the town, as public works say, we have to remove the tree.
So the tree warden for Mass General Law has the authority to remove a hazard tree.
And then
The
who
only
pays
person
the
that has
fees
the
and
authority.
who's paying for the replacement? of it?
There's no fees to remove a tree.
And you don't have a requirement to plant new tree then, or
That's,
you
yeah,
should fall under this?
that's one of the exemptions, 2.5.1A.
Good corn.
Well, it says one or more, right? So presumably the planning board could say both.
So there's only two ways that a public shade tree is removed, that I will authorize removal. One, if it's deemed a hazard,
Yeah.
public safety, right? And two, if it passes a public shade tree hearing, which is a publicly posted meeting, it's posted for 2 weeks in the local newspaper and on the tree itself for 2 weeks. And if it, those are the only two, we will not remove a tree if it's healthy and in the public right of way, it's just protected trees. And when we do remove trees, we have a very, I would say, on a side note, when we remove trees, we have a very active tree planting program in town. And we plant a lot of trees down as well.
So now take that to a public works project that, based on layout in our roads policy, where you want it to conform, trees may need to come down that are healthy. How do we envision that process? That's gonna be involving the planning board review. And I would imagine at the time, there'd likely be consideration, as long as we make our case, we'd have to make the case, with probably some replanting or commitment of mitigation of some sort, I would expect. Just so we understand, that could be another, that's a scenario outside, there's a imminent threat or danger. That's a planned removal as part of a larger project the Public Works is actually designing.
Or you could be willing to bid 375 an inch.
So I think the roads that are scenic roads are gonna have to have their own, this was given to us at one point, the process flow and time chart for roads projects. They're gonna have to have their own, because you're gonna have to try to figure out if they're gonna need 9 weeks of review and decision time. If you ever have a project that needs tree removal or stone wall maintenance or anything like that, because the planning board gets 9 weeks to decide, to plan a meeting and decide whether or not that project can go forward.
So you said in the beginning you haven't had a chance to sit down with Elizabeth Hughes. Where's her office?
We're almost in it.
It's in the end.
So it's at least close enough that they're sitting down and talking in
Yeah,
person. Should be possible.
I suppose we were waiting for an invitation.
I have noticed that, when, like, watching the meetings of the planning board, when someone else is trying to make the case for Public Works' arguments, they're not quite as strong or maybe not quite as understood as it could be. So I would recommend like meeting with the people face to face and going through this as often as you have to. I know that's a ton of work, but like if this could go horribly wrong if it's not very, very precise. And I don't think that is getting done with Public Works concerns not being represented fully at the planning board meetings.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think face-to-face conversations are necessary to get to something that's workable for us all. But I believe that a lot of communities have these laws in place. And either one, they're not being implemented strictly, or two, Public Works has resigned to like, we can't do anything different. I know that at least for one town, superintendent I spoke with, said, okay, just can't do anything about it.
Well, I think it's important that the comments or the concerns be raised, be documented. If they make it, they make it. If they don't make it and a problem comes up, you've got the documentation to go back and say, we need to revise the regulations further to be able to make sure that Public Works can do things appropriately. If that's what the concern is.
That's a very good.
So, I mean, it may not happen for 4 or 5 years, so it may well be a completely different group that is sitting at this table. And so having documentation will be very important for that group to be able to understand what has gone through, and hopefully it'll be pretty well acceptable, and we'll find out what happens as we do projects.
Yeah, and I just say, Andrew, I think your point of the original discussions were in a different time, different setting. I mean, these things kind of came on with a lot of new positions, transition in Public Works, COVID. I think there's some projects that were concerns out in the community. So I think you're right. It didn't go through that kind of tried and tested approach that I think worked in the past. The intent is very real. You can hear people wanting to, preserve, protect, like Public Works. We're close to it. And we have policies that are all about that. I will say the horribly wrong. I think the fact is the train left the tracks. We're on it, and we're trying to do as much course correction as possible and flag those things out of experience that we have, especially with administration implementation of the shade tree. And there's lessons that have been learned and hopefully will be listened to. But I think we're just, there may not be issues down the road. We're trying to do our due diligence, and it's difficult. And Steve has a lot of experience, Aaron has a lot of experience. We just hope it's, we can put it forward. But I think the intent is always the town thinks one thing, and the mechanics, minutia are what we're wrestling with, and it's not easy. It really isn't.
Well, those were all wrestled with way before, in the
Exactly.
past.
Yeah.
They were wrestled out before any warrant article was accepted. And by horribly wrong, I just mean, again, the irony that if these roads end up in disrepair, because of
Yeah.
the law that's meant to protect them,
Mm.
that it seems like everyone would be very disappointed at that result.
Are you or anyone from Public Works listening into the planning board meetings? Or
We haven't just been, invited to participate. I've observed after, I've watched the meetings. My take is there hasn't been a lot of back and forth and sort of interest other than what we've sort of presented through staff. We can certainly continue. I think if they have a conversation, it's possible that we could be available, to answer some questions if they have them. Would be nice. I would say, we could make that request.
I think like the example, when we read through this and we ask for examples from you and Steve, it's really helpful. I mean, you have very clear cut examples to give us based on experience and what you know about the town. So I would think that would be equally helpful to them as they go through this process.
I'll make that request when we submit the comments.
yeah, the reason why I asked the question is I think is public, the planning board is making here and a lot of other topics, decisions that affect public works. And I get a sense that, let's say the few months I'm here and even before I listened to like more or less to every planning board meeting the last 2 years, I get the sense there is potentially kind of a missing piece of communication there. And I'm just thinking about, is there a need that at least there is awareness what the planning board is doing or about to make decisions that could affect the public works and then have a faster reaction to it? Because I remember when this was discussed in the planning board was sitting there, why is this in our authority? Yeah, and at that moment that could have been the one opportunity to move it off. So I'm just thinking, is there some mechanism that there is at least a better communication path or information flow structurally there? I know other committees have liaison managers or liaison people appointed. Yeah. Yeah, so, but I don't have a sense that there is a liaison between, let's say, us here and planning board. I think the other committee that is the question is potential, I don't know if it's where, let's say, the town makes their plans about how many housing they want to have and so on, which has huge effects on the planning board. So perhaps there are two committees where there is a need for a liaison role. That might be potentially something you have to bring up to, I don't know, select board or not, I don't know, who's deciding that?
You decide that.
You decide that? Oh, that's even better.
I was going to recommend something similar. Should we have a liaison to the planning board? At a minimum, we're looking at their agenda and determining if our designated person needs to attend. And I'm not talking to staff. It could be staff or one of us, but
So,
whoever we decide that needs to be.
yeah, I think that's up to the commission. It hasn't been done from my experience, which is, I go back 26 years now. It doesn't mean it couldn't or shouldn't be done. In fact, you'll see their liaisons from the historic commission and, who attend our meetings. So it's certainly something to consider. I think there's two tiers. There's a staff communication, which we can kind of look at as well. But planning is going to go through its own transition soon. So I'm sort of sensitive to what can we do on the staff level, but at the same time, it's almost like with an appeal, staff's here to support, but we're not gonna go in and try and manage or influence another committee or commission. And that's where the liaison might be, have value. So I think that's a good, sort of suggestion. There are Mary, is it 54 committees or something like that?
It's more than that.
Okay, so we'll assign, 8 to each of you. No,
No, I think we only need to pick perhaps two.
maybe
Yeah,
it's
it's like the
maybe
ones that influence public works
exactly.
the most.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, so there might be a couple that we wanna, kind of flag and identify. Planning's an obvious one. And you can kind of look at some of those other committees to see if there's, a need and opportunity.
Transportation and natural resources.
Could be,
Might-
yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing is to, if not even be able to attend, but be able to at least review. The nice thing is these hybrid meetings now make it possible
Yeah.
to kind of casually observe
Mhm.
and participate. And we've seen that, it's kind of, I enjoy the people who participate while they're folding their laundry.
Yeah,
They're multitasking and they're engaged. We would have lost them otherwise. So that's an opportunity. And if it's even after the fact, at least you know what they discussed and you can bring it back to the commission. So I think it's a great idea. And I think 2 levels, the staffing I'll work on,
Mhm.
we can see on the,
And-
you might ask maybe if you can think about it between now and maybe the next meeting, your interests, unless,
Yep.
you want to move on that one now, but. what-
No, let's put it on the next or the latest on the one thereafter, but
Okay.
one of the 2 next, we should have it on the agenda.
I would recommend the next one, because
Yeah.
if they're talking about this every month.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course, we can tune in anyway.
You can, but I think it's just knowing someone's doing that. And again, it's that voice of a fellow citizen, that's what the power you bring to the table, not staff who, so, in the weeds. All right.
Did you cover everything you wanted to cover?
I think so. I think that cover like all the most important items.
Okay, and did anyone else want to bring attention to anything in the memo or the regulation?
Very well. Yeah.
Good point. Yes.
Okay, so does anyone want to draft the motion to, okay, Public Works for representing these ideas to the planning board?
Need to. Is that a motion?
That's the motion there.
I can print this out.
Go right ahead.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion. And James Basser, I go by officially in James, anything. So I'm gonna make this official. I, James Basser, hereby make a motion to authorize the director to prepare a memorandum to the planning board to be signed by the Public Works Commission's chair, offering recommendations and comments on the revised draft rules and regulations for the administration of the scenic roads general bylaw.
Second.
Thank you.
So roll call vote, Jeff Basser,
Aye.
James Terry,
Aye.
Ben Weber,
Aye.
David Delon,
Aye.
Andrea Solomon, aye. Oh, motion passed.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you.
Great work.
Footnotes.
Sorry, I'm not here.
All right, we're on a record-setting pace here, ladies and gentlemen.
Don't jinx it.
Don't,
Yeah.
This is now up to you. This
Oh,
is,
okay. Oh,
we are
oh,
now.
how many questions we asked him?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we should make Andrea the permanent chair.
No one would ever hear me.
She's ruthless.
So are we starting with engineering?
Okay, so we're at the director's report. Yep. Let me bring up, see if I can share a screen. And basically. See how this goes. All right, I think. Yeah, I think that's. I know there's better ways of doing this, but I think this will work. So let's start with engineering division, Steve. We've got a technical, this, now we're gonna start showing some of the detail sheets, right? This is,
Exactly.
Yeah.
I would say this is purely coincidental. Guardrails. The question was about, using standards for guardrails. We are working on a guardrail project. We have a deteriorated guardrail in town. Trying to get some replaced or repaired this year. So we're working on some plans. I had my engineer submit a sheet that is working on. It does show one of the things I wanted to point out. You see the top left-hand corner, that item there? That's called an end treatment. So you have to, for higher speed roads, you have to offset it. And we're talking about the impact it can have.
Yeah.
Well, you will see more detailed sheets in the future, right? That's
Sure. Best we can do.
Yeah.
Just showing some work that was done recently. Just, when you pave a road and you pack the edges, you have to come back and loam and seed and all of that. So we've got Anson and Autumn that work was done recently. Same thing for these two streets, presently in Raymond. That's it for us.
Does anybody, will take it sort of as an opportunity if you want to talk, any engineering, anything you saw in the director's report, you'd like to ask Steve? Things that, it's really up to you. You don't have to have questions, but I will say the director's report are very detailed. They're helpful to me and staff to go back to kind of remind us when we did certain things, and there's enough detail so there's value to staff. So it's good for us to create, but they're also good for you. Even if you're familiar with something and someone asks you a question, you might be able to go back and find the answer, and then, kind of next time you see them, share. But, it's a good resource, but we don't always go through all the details, but it's there just so that we're not, it's there for your eyes as well. And anytime you have questions, and I would say, you don't have to wait for a meeting to call me and, ask for, clarification if something doesn't make sense. So just keep that offer open, but that's it. Anything for engineering that anybody has at this point?
Yeah, I want to talk about Commonwealth Avenue.
Okay.
Hopefully, whatever had to be done that delayed us in the fall has been done. And that early in the spring, that be done as soon as we can. That road is terrible. I bypass it twice a day. And, we can fix the holes, but the holes come back. And, luckily we haven't had a whole lot of moisture. But if we had moisture and under 32-degree temperatures, it would be falling apart even more.
Yeah.
So hopefully it is, the contractor is aware that, that we want that done as quickly as we can when the season starts.
So all of the work on the utilities,
Yeah.
that's done. So the sequence of work, when we get back to that project in the spring, the first thing is to add some drainage. And it's not a whole lot of work. Drainage can take 1 to 2 weeks to get in. And the second is to reclaim the road and pave it to binder. So
Yeah.
that would be
Perfect. As long as we can make it somewhat flat, that'd be great.
The sidewalk work will take quite a while.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of impact the businesses and all of that.
Thank you.
The last 2 meetings, we had citizens here complaining about what road was.
Understand.
Yeah. So what's the status on that?
So we've been monitoring that road, and indeed, the circular part, a good portion of it, it seems that the chips aren't sticking as expected. So Aaron had his crews sweep it recently. We'll continue to monitor it and evaluate whether it's really deteriorating or it's going to get better. But we are planning right now, at least budgetarily, to resurface the road, preferably using microsurfacing, just like we did on Hildreth. So
That was on Prairie Street too, right?
Yes.
very
Yes, because that is much smoother than College Road and Nurse Neck Hill.
right.
Any learning out of that?
Yes, a couple of things. I think we talked about those before. Motor traffic.
Yeah.
You need traffic to really pack those chips in. You need to apply the stuff in the the right time of the year, when it's warmer. And, the other thing about a road like that, it's a pretty wide road up there. And the few cars you have, they're kind of not, they're just driving in one path, they're not driving all over.
So yeah, one pass is good and the rest is.
Yeah, so that's kind of thing. So we have to be very more, we have to be better at selecting streets for that.
And you keep the citizens there informed that they feel heard or taken care of or.
They actually keep coming to us, so.
Yeah,
So
so but
that way, we let them know. In fact, we're having the contractor come probably next week
Mhm.
to look at to see if it's performing the way he had expected or not. And maybe we can get some extra work out of it. When after that, we let the neighbor know.
okay,
Yeah, so this is a plan, and we said this is a pilot. We're learning lessons, and, you know, across the neighborhood, we've heard them. The challenge is we don't wanna overreact. But with time and, you know, with eyes on it, you know, the realization is taking longer than it would have been expected. We thought it would be gradual improvements, but even when you drive up there, you see the material will kick up. So I think the whole idea of the kind of microsurfacing is only something recently that Steve said. I think we're at that point where we should be looking at that. And our interest is to satisfy the community. It's not to go into neighborhoods and upset them. It was an attempt to try and do something that was cost effective. I will state that the treatment was put on a road that was otherwise not really crying out for service. Preservation is that. It's going to be a better level quality road all the time. So it wasn't a neighborhood that said, we need you in, you know, so it was sort of an upset of you came in and you made things worse. So I think, you know, that's part of the lesson learned, and the outreach and communication is part of the lessons learned. But I think once we have a plan, then we will and can circle, you know, back with the neighborhood. The good news with that neighborhood, there's an association and they communicate, you know, so once we have this game plan and we have a little bit more detail, we will share it.
Yeah.
With them.
So we plan on coming at the next meeting, we mentioned that earlier. We'll be discussing our projects for 2023. It's more of a public meeting for public input, but in your presence like we did a year ago. You remember that? So we'll cover some of those again, but just wanted to highlight about preservation. So Alan, you said you get a better level of service, more roads. If you do more preservation at a cheaper cost, you have more roads operating at a better service. The other benefit to preservation, you delay deterioration because the roads decline like this. You preserve it, it stays at a higher level for a longer time.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask a question from Steve. Can the specification be tightened up so that there's a performance acceptance criteria? Even if there's like a time duration where it's assessed after a certain number of days, that we'd be able to use to hold the contractor accountable?
Like most contracts, I think you can have that in the contract. The issues with these treatments, the number of contractors there are there, so you can compare. You have one contractor in this region that does the asphalt rubber chip seal. And you have one contractor also that does a different one, the microsurfacing. So if you have, you know, yes, we can add more to the contract to hold them accountable. The cost will go up, obviously. Yeah, we will let them know.
I'm gonna use this opportunity to jump in on our roads policy. So if we're talking about roads, I brought it up a couple meetings ago about revisiting our roads policy. Not that I think it's bad, but it's been over 20 years and technology's changed and practices have changed. And I would recommend to the commission, it would be good to revisit it and see where it might be strengthened in some areas, or maybe there are some things we don't want in there anymore. I don't know what the rest of the commission thinks about that.
30 years is a long time.
That would be
And
great.
not to put work on
No, no.
staff either, I'm happy
You
to.
just did.
I know, but I'm happy
It's
to-
in sync- Yeah, it's in sync with what we are trying to achieve anyway, and with the preservation techniques, they are newer. And in fact, the competitiveness, I think we're seeing some of the model communities are getting some return on their investment. It takes some time. This is not an immediate fix, but they're starting to get their voice out there. Other communities are starting to track it, and, you know, the key is the more it works, you know, more communities want greater competition. You know, can only hope other vendors are gonna kind of get into the business, so. But no, Jeff, you were clear and earlier, and it's been on our radar and how to look at that.
I'm not a traffic engineer, I'm a landscape architect, but I work a lot with roads and again, knowing up to be a little dangerous, so. I'm happy to work with you if you think that would help.
Yes,
So that
yeah,
takes some of
sure,
the
so
pressure off.
we like it, but we actually, staff has been discussing this. already.
Okay.
Important would be putting in what's called a pavement management program.
Yep.
It's the technology, but also the processes in that. The current policy doesn't, address that. And the types of treatments.
Yep.
As well as the timeline. There's a timeline there. And we want to have a timeline that's more practical for
Yeah.
us.
And getting back to,
Yeah.
we were mentioning earlier about if it's a scenic road, we need to factor that into the timeline.
I got one citizen question that relates to this, I think, and that's try to explain this a little bit. The most simple thing is around the cost of public parking lots. So the background, if I understood that lady correctly, is the planning board regular basis lays parking requirements for applicants and then say, hey, they can use public parking lots, like most recently for Concord Academy, 57 parking lots along Main Street. And the citizen, she was concerned about, okay, they do that, but who pays for maintaining and repairing these 57 parking lots? And so this question came up today, is what is the cost associated with these things where 3 parking lots are provided? And what is the budgetary impact of that? So is there any rule number to say, I don't know, a public parking lot cost us X per year or things like that?
Yes, we actually, last year we completed the renovation of the Store Street parking lot.
Yeah.
And the price for space is about $2,500.
On a one project or on annual maintenance?
So this is the parking lot itself. This is what we're building the lot.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
Reclamation, paving, striping.
Yeah.
Signing. And we took the total cost divided by number of spaces. So $2,500 space. On the street, for instance, Main Street, that.
Yeah.
Concord Academy is parking, it'll be more, probably 30–40% more.
Yeah.
Add that because of, it'd be a thicker pavement. It would be more traffic control and that kind of thing. But, so that's the actual value of
The value that.
creating
went
that
away.
space.
Okay,
Then there's also, and it's important because Steve has flagged this, to my attention in the past, when we're going through, projects that are large, like the Concord Academy, the impact on the public way is not just the parking, we also are dealing with transportation issues townwide that we really don't have our arms around. So, we are working with a new senior transportation planner, bringing her into the mix because once you dedicate it to a parking, you're now eliminating an opportunity for some other use, whether cycling or, who knows? I mean, the right of way is valuable real estate and we flagged it, but the town has to come to grips with competing needs and interests, so, where there's economic growth development sort of needs, there's coordination and collaboration with, institutions that have been here forever. And then there's the whole transportation, challenge, but the Envision Concord at least allows a mechanism for us to start at least thinking this way. But the question is really legitimate. What's the value of that public space?
Yeah.
When it's used by a private entity?
Yeah, and again, I think that the citizen was thinking about, and I think she had proposed that to the planning board, that at least if you do that, charge some one-off fee or whatever.
Yeah.
That goes into whatever the town's budgets and,
Yeah, right.
because it has a value. Yeah. Okay.
No reason to have that liaison.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. All right, we'll go to Darren. You want to come up? All right. Yeah, that's right.
Good evening, everyone. Aaron Claus will have a ground superintendent, so in the report.
Still?
Yeah, yes, for the record. For this month, we're really focusing on, or I guess December, focusing on winter maintenance preparations. So the photo on the left is a new piece of equipment the town just purchased and it arrived. It's a Ventrex. It's a small tractor. It's got a number of attachments on the front, a snow blower, a power angle plow that we purchased, and it has a liquid brine tank. You can see it on the front there, and that's going to be used primarily for sidewalk winter maintenance. There is an option. We did not purchase that for a sweeper, so it could be used year round for sweeping sidewalks as well. But this primary focus is winter maintenance and the narrower sidewalk in town. So there's a number of locations that we maintain will fall within our sidewalk maintenance policy. Then in the past, we've had to, we call it the hand route, the manual route where we send shovelers out there. And the last few seasons, we've contracted with landscaping companies to come out and shovel. 2 years in a row, they quit mid-season, and we are stuck kind of maintaining those by hand.
Shoveling is hard work.
It is, and really, that falls on the operators. It's the same operators that are out driving plow trucks and heavy equipment for hours on end, days on end. And now they have to go and have to take them out of truck and have them manually shovel sidewalks. The expectation is it's done as fast as possible, right? So this piece of equipment is narrower, so it's actually 36 inches wide, and it allows us to get into tight spots such as around Monument Square, bridge decks in town, and some of the narrow spaces like Concord Turnpike or Cambridge Turnpike, where we have the culverts that are installed that have guardrails and wooden pedestrian guards on the backside of the guardrails, and that's narrow. We cannot run a sidewalk bombardier plow down, but this machine will fit. So we were able to maintain those areas that we've committed and have been maintaining for years more effectively and efficiently. So we're excited. This is the gentleman standing on it is a trainer from the vendor, TPC, out of Connecticut, is purchased off a state contract. And training the highway and grounds personnel in the use and operation of that. In addition to having this equipment now, we're going to be trialing out this year for the first time. I emphasize that it's a trial that maintaining some of the new pathways in some of the parks in town. For example, Ride Out and Park had a new pathway that was installed. Component kind of wraps around to the parking lot off Lawsbrook. And as we've received a number of requests since those installed to maintain that. We don't have really the ability, the manpower to be able to effectively, efficiently maintain it. Now that we have this equipment, we're going to try to see how it goes. It was not designed to be plowed or maintained in the wintertime, but we're going to try. Another example is the new AD accessible pathways that are in Emerson that were installed as part of the Emerson Park Phase 1 construction project. Again, those are not designed to be maintained in the wintertime. In fact, we saw some drainage issues during this installation season. While the contractor's still on board, we had to actually do a change order, install stormwater retention structures along the pathway to collect the stormwater. Last summer, if you remember, we had heavy rains and there was some ponding, so we installed those catch basins in the dark, and that would effectively drain the area. The concern would be, because they're not designed to be plowed, is that once we plow them, not a problem, snow's off. It's when there's a melt, daytime melting, nighttime freezing, and the snow banks on either side, there's no drainage, like you would see on maybe a roadway, and that water is going to then accumulate into the walkway. It's going to freeze overnight, and it's going to be a constant de-icing battle. That's the concern. So it's a trial. We're gonna see how it goes, but this equipment will allow us to try it out and see if we are able to provide that service to the residents. And then if we are, we'll have to figure out a long-term solution on making sure we have the, enough staffing and resources to continue that.
And the de-icing also has an impact on the material itself, so.
Yeah.
It'll get beaten up.
Right.
Quicker.
The material, and then also I would say the surrounding areas is important. Emerson and Right Out are heavily used athletic fields. And de-icing means we're putting salt down, right? And salt in the grass don't necessarily mix well together, right? We don't use pesticides, we have a very comprehensive turf management program. And we don't want to do is impact that because we're plowing it and trying to maintain it for a few winter storms in the wintertime. When there are 44 miles of sidewalk that we do plow throughout town. So we'll see how that goes. But I wanted to highlight that here today.
How do you get that equipment to various parts of the town? Does it get up on a pickup truck?
It will not. It is too heavy to get up on. So we have what it comes to rack body trucks. So it's got an open body that has panels on the side that are removable and power lift gate. It's too heavy to go on the lift gate.
Okay.
So we have a utility trailer. So this would be loaded on a utility trailer, and then transported.
Okay, because some of
towed by
the
truck.
places you mentioned are far apart from each other.
Right, like we could probably drive it down the sidewalk, down the street to get, with the idea of the brine tank is that we could maybe brine the centers downtown areas ahead of the storm, if the
Yeah.
conditions allow us to do that, we could probably drive it down, but we do have a utility trailer, and we put it on a utility trailer. We have some box, a enclosed trailer, that we acquired from water and sewer from a project that we're looking to retrofit to be able to use that as well, possibly. So be towing it around town, essentially. Any other questions on that? All right, so the photo on the right, it's not ComAv, but it is another street in town. Yeah, so Main Street, actually, I think is and so we're actively patching potholes in town. So we do have a hot box, which is one of our swab loader trucks, and what that is, it's a removable attachment. It's just that it's a large steel box, steel structure. It's heated, and we are able to get hot asphalt mix, and we send operators to the asphalt plant, and we get hot asphalt every day that we can. And the weather allows us to patch in the wintertime, we do that. Some towns don't do that; they use cold mix. But we're trying to do that. Our hot box, I will say, was down for the last about a month, because the fuel tank was leaking, and they are custom ordered fuel tanks, and so it took a long time to order that, get it, but it is installed back in service. So we do mix patch bottles with cold mix if that is unavailable, but that's been running and will continue to run throughout the winter. And patching with hot mix throughout town. We monitor the areas. We usually do plow routes, we'll do some mains, we'll do side roads. We are out, send people out, crew leaders to inspect, come up with a list, and then we also take, as we receive notifications from residents or people driving on the roads, we respond to those. We work on our management system and track all the potholes, and we close them out. Lots of tree work going on in the winter time. Luckily, there's not been a lot of snow, so we've been able to be pretty active in our tree maintenance, and catch up on some trees. You can see here some hazard trees and dead trees we've identified along the public rights of way. These are photos of some of our crews. Our park and tree specialists, not only do these folks kind of maintain parks and open spaces, they are also trained in tree maintenance as well. So we have a variety of equipment. Photo on the left is one of our chippers, chipping logs into the back of one of the trucks. The photo in the middle, it shows an operator. There's a bucket truck kind of off the side. He's in the bucket. We have a load backhoe extending over, and he's strapping and tying off the butt at the top of the butt of the log to the strap while he's in the bucket in the air, and then to send an operator down at the lower, safely lower to the ground. Photo on the right, you can see a groundsman, Sean. He is over there cutting that log.
So on the trees, I got a question from a citizen around, and you mentioned that before, around the tree planting program. So just, again, that's more for us or for me to answer some questions like, how many trees are we planting per year? How do we select the trees? It was definitely focused on certain specific trees. I have no idea. What about more like, are they bird friendly or not? How do you look at this? Yeah.
So, I'm assuming that maybe the questions were generated from the recent article in the Bridge.
And that was actually after I had that conversation, but it's the same group of
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, so, I will say that work closely with some of those individuals, Brian Rossborough, I've talked to him, you know, throughout the year about tree planting, tree maintenance throughout town. We work together on the development of the tree guide. I don't, probably haven't seen that. I know some of us, we can bring a copy. So we have actually I might pull it out all and I can grab for you. But a few years ago, I'll answer a couple questions. So a few years ago, tree guide, we created a tree guide in Concord Public Works. It's a Concord tree planting guide. Where we recommend 30 different species of trees in town. It also talks about our maintenance recommendations for different types of trees, whether they're young trees or more mature trees, planting program, you know, right tree, right place, how to plant trees, things to consider, utilities, dig safe, all those things. So it's very comprehensive. It's on the town website. You go on the town website, under Public Works, highway and grounds, trees, tree guides right there, PDF, you can download it. And we have handouts available. We distribute them to schools, the library, different events like Arbor Day, or there's a seedling kind of giveaway that the library coordinates, and we support that and give those brochures out. So that's a reference document that I would suggest maybe forwarding to the resident that had questions. As far as tree planting, we have a very active tree planting program. You know, we try to target 100 trees every year. I think I requested about $75,000. Typically get about $50,000 for tree planting throughout town, where we're able to use that money to plant public shade trees. So that's trees within the right of way. We have a running list of residents that kind of, you know, call us throughout the year and say they want a tree in front of their property. And so every fall and every spring season, we'll go out and visit, meet with every individual property owner, talk about the trees, bring the tree guide. We give a selection based on available nursery stock. We don't offer all 30, but we offer a couple small, couple medium, couple large, usually seasonally available. And then we work with them on determining, you know, doing dig safe, determining the right location for the tree, planting the tree. If we can't find a little good location of public right of way in front of the private residents, I will plant out what we call setback tree up to 15 feet beyond the public right of way line on a private property. The caveat with that is, if it's on private property, the homeowner maintains the tree. We will supply a watering bag, and then the homeowner is responsible for watering that tree. Any trees that we plant in the public right of way, we will water them weekly. So we have a tanker truck, we send out a couple of boys go out, takes about, depending on the trees, 8 to 16 hours to water all the trees that we plant. We'll maintain them for a season and a year and a half. Plant those trees. So yeah, it's a pretty active program. We'll plant trees in parks and cemeteries as well, and on other town land.
They have a number, it was like 64 trees planted last year.
Yeah. And then what happens too is it really depends on, so the cost of the tree. So we can plant trees in-house. We have the equipment, the staff that are trained to plant trees. We right now are down one. We have a head count of 7 in our park and tree group. We're down right now. We've operated with 6 for a while, however many few years, trying to hire constantly, kind of blocks trying to hire folks. But I think we're not the only ones struggling with that. The last couple of years, we've had to outsource usually one season or another. And so obviously there's a cost associated with hiring a third party to come in and plant trees that are more expensive. So what we did this last season is we procured all the trees. So we got the best price from the nurseries. And then we hired Davy Resource Group, which is a company that we work with, and many towns in the Commonwealth work with and worked with them for a long time. And they supplied skilled labor to come in and plant the trees at the locations that we've already vetted with the resident. So that works, because during the planting season, it's usually late fall, or mid-fall, mid-spring. Those are growing seasons and cleanup seasons, and those same staff are, busy maintaining athletic fields, doing cleanups, pruning trees. And so if we gotta kind of make it all fit and work together.
All right, Aaron, thank you. So lesson's been, good employees maintain trees. Unfortunately, good employees don't grow on trees. Yeah, if you want to come up. Jim is close enough to kick them. They did that. Yes, will bring us up to speed on sort of wastewater issues.
We've got, it's actually water focused. I've got 4 slides here, 3 subjects. First 2 slides center on our leak detection. We do this on an annual basis. We have a leak detection contractor performing leak detection services on half of the town's water mains, and we have 134 miles, so that's 67 miles. And this season, there were only 2 detected leaks, and one happened to be the result of the report. Observed water bubbling up, and it was somewhat of a biggie. It was on this is the GIS view screenshot of the CMLP property on Elm Street, 1175 Elm Street. On the easterly face, you can see how the water main kind of wraps around the eastern side and comes up and connects into the building on the south side. There's a little bump out on the eastern side of the building. That's where one of the building entrances are. This is a side-by-side 2-inch water service together with a 6-inch fire service. They were laid side by side with one another, and they were fairly deep. And CMLP actually noticed some significant bubbling up. And we called our leak detection contractor to go out there and assess location and to establish an estimate of what the leak amount was. And he estimated it at 15.5 gallons per minute, which would be 22,000 gallons per day. So it was fairly significant, and we immediately mobilized. We called it an emergency dig safe, and we were out there the very next day doing a repair on this. So we did this fairly quickly, and it was actually a good teaming effort also with the operations group of CMLP, which is a good network connection to be able to work together with those guys. So they were very helpful there and helping us out, helping us help them. The other leak that was detected is comparatively a small leak. And through recent years, there's been some service leaks in this neighborhood. This is Comerford Road, also in the northwestern portion of the town. There was no surface grade visible evidence that a leak was going on here, but the auditory detection equipment that the leak detection service provider uses was able to listen and hear a leak going on at this hydrant. Because it's a small leak, it's something that we don't necessarily jump on immediately. It's not the same emergency that was going on at the CMLP property, but we would tackle this as soon as we can, and we have staffing available. This was comparatively smaller. It was estimated at 2 gallons per minute, which is just under 3,000 gallons per day. So it's still nothing to sneeze at, and that the program is intended to control losses. Lost water is lost revenue. It costs money to pump it, treat it, send it out, store it, and so forth. And it's also required by the state, part of our annual reporting, to capture how much lost water we have.
So was it at a hydrant or was that picture there for other reason?
No, it is at that location. We don't know specifically where it is, if it's at the gate valve, which is the shut off valve to the hydrant, if it's on the T connection where the 6-inch hydrant barrel comes into the main, or if there's a crack on the hydrant lateral itself. So we don't know specifically where it is, but it's relatively small, and he could hear it with his acoustic equipment. Okay.
You said there were in the past on that street several leaks. Is there a specific reason? Is this old infrastructure or? It's
one of those problematic material types called asbestos cement or transite. It can have some vulnerability to water hammer. It can not be quite as strong as iron, whether it's cast iron or ductile iron. It is a dead end neighborhood, so it's one of those things where we have to weigh out the value of the project, because we're in the process of putting a project out to bid in another part of town, in the northeast part of town, and the Butternut Circle neighborhood. That's another transite water main material. So this is something, given the history, that we would consider prioritizing this, and we would work together with engineering in terms of the roads program and the utilities. When you do this type of thing, you want to dig it once and not multiple times. This one gets to our second subject, and this is wells redevelopment. This is part of maintenance of the water supply program. The images that we're looking at here at the Deaconess site off of Ornac. The photograph to the right is our service contractor, DLMR, and they're performing work on the rear well. There's 2 wells at the site. Early in calendar 22, we rehabbed the front well, which is more readily visible from the roadway. And this one is the rear well behind the treatment building. And there's a process and reasoning behind this. As a well gets used, dissolved minerals within the geology will oxidize and form incrustations as the water is coming through the aquifer and it's coming into the well casing. Another thing that can happen, there is bacteria that really like iron and can form bioslimes. And what these things do is they reduce the ability of water to travel through the aquifer and into the well casing and into the well screen and to be able to be pumped up. So this process is not just addressing these mineral incrustations and so forth, but it's also looking at inspecting the mechanical components of the well, the shaft, the bowls, the couplings, the pump, the motor, to see if they're in good working order, or if any repairs are needed. This video clip is not super exciting. It's only 10 seconds long, so there's no popcorn or Raisinets or snow caps opportunities here. But it gives you a little bit better sense.
Well, we are gonna get you back for dinner very soon.
It communicates a little bit more than a still photograph does. And what they're doing is they're surging the well in this location.
Of course.
You have to take my word for it.
You said there's gonna be a pilot, so I will close that.
So if you wanted to,
I can't make it go, so I'm gonna go back. to
well, the still image I could have explained.
Okay,
At any rate, this boom,
no, see video. I'm not gonna play with that. One back.
it has the ability to plunge up and down. There's a reason for that mechanical action of moving water. It's done to help remove those materials, so that there's usually 3 chemicals that would be utilized in additional to a plunging action to help remove materials. The first one is usually muriatic acid, which is hydrochloric acid. It's a strong acid, but it's not concentrated in what's added. It helps to dissolve those iron materials and manganese materials that are oxides encrusting. Dissolving them, putting them to solution, lets us pump it out, and that's what we're pumping out on the right. It looks very orange, bright orange. That's very iron rich right there. So a second chemical we would use is soda ash, which is a alkaline chemical, and it's used to offset the acid, neutralize the acid. And then at the conclusion of the testing and redevelopment and reinserting the mechanical equipment back into the well, we'd be disinfecting the well, of course, to sanitize it. And that chemical we use is sodium hypochlorite for that. So this does produce pronounced improvements in the capacity and the yield of the well from pre-redevelopment to post-redevelopment. The contractor will do an initial test to know what it's actually capable of producing before he starts. And then we have a target goal on where we think he should be able to get to with the redevelopment process. So this was the third well. This work got started late in December. So we'll just have to reinstall the mechanical components, and then this particular well will be buttoned up. And then they'll be going over to Robinson Well. We're planning to do that in this winter season as well. Next slide.
And we do the rehab during the off-peak period, so we don't have the high demand. When we do have the high demand, the yield is available during the summer, so it's sort of a good time of year for that. And I'm gonna say we got less than 5 minutes. If we're gonna wrap up by 6, that could be a goal. Let's see where we stand.
Well, this can be very brief, depending on how many questions we have. This is just a simple shot. We're actually looking southeasterly from the Nagog Water Treatment Facility preferred parcel, where if we build the treatment facility, this is the plot where we would do it. This is also on that 1175 Elm Street property parcel where CMLP is located. It's just the eastern section of that property that has not.
Toward the gas station.
Exactly. It's immediately adjacent to the gas station. So this is looking towards the prison, and that is Route 2 behind the trucks. This is a geotech contractor doing borings and taking rock corings. It's part of the pre-design investigations that Environmental Partners has sub-consulted out. This design work is moving forward. We're still in what's called the preliminary design. We'll be getting together with Environmental Partners tomorrow morning for a preliminary design review workshop meeting. And we've already reviewed the documents that they've provided, including preliminary drawings. And then we'll be looking at where we go from there. We did not have a warrant article specific for NAGOG treatment facility at the upcoming spring meeting. We are still in conversations with MWRA. Alan and I were both at the MWRA board meeting in Boston. That was in early December. We are in continuing discussions with them. MWRA is considering expansions into 3 different areas. We're the newest to the party, Metro West. We're also considering North Shore and South Shore, and things may be more favorable to expand westward than it is with the political aspects of North Shore and South Shore. But we are still dialoguing both with our prospective coalition members of other communities as well as MWRA.
Great, thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
questions?
I know that the MWRA is doing a study or review or whatever. Do you have a sense as to when that is going to be finished?
Yeah, so they're presently evaluating conceptual layout. And I think we're probably talking, you know, it's gonna be years of assessments. We'll find out next after, I think we have a monthly meeting now.
The next one is tentatively scheduled for Thursday of next week,
Next
a week
week.
from tomorrow.
Yeah, and so, Jim, we're really just trying to track realistically what is their radar and timetable. I think the next step for Concord is going to be starting to understand the politics of it in the region. It's not just Concord, it's going to include, you know, some of the coalition involves Lincoln, Sudbury, Acton, Littleton, Maynard, and up Chelmsford. You know, the one thing that's unique for Concord is we're kind of in the middle of almost all of the concepts. So one way or another, we're a key player. But that really is the challenge we have to try and figure out a schedule for NAGOG for treatment, as well as a schedule for other sources of supply, given the PFAS dilemma of if standards are adopted by EPA, we, like the entire country, are we're in a pickle. It's this drive towards a new standard that almost nobody can meet. On a positive note, MWRA, their source water falls below what we would anticipate an EPA standard. So we have to look at, we're looking at short and long game here. And NAGOG may be inevitable, but we just want to make sure we're looking at a significant investment. We just want to understand if we move forward, what does that mean in 10, 20 years? That's sort of our first order of decision making.
EPA is behind schedule and public noticing that new MCL too. They were expecting to have that out by the end of calendar 22.
Yeah.
So it could be any time now.
And they may or may not want to move it. Who knows? So,
Thank you.
I'm sorry,
Almost fast. Mary Harvey, 16 Concord, 3 members, select board, speaking on my own behalf. Does the commission get involved with developing the enterprise fund budgets?
We review the budget. We did a capital review.
Okay.
With it. The operating will not be part of it until we really get into the rates. You know, the operating is not something that is generally brought before the commission. Okay. But it's really the capital plan is where the larger, area of interest was, but that's historically how it's worked.
Okay, the reason I ask is because, there's a lot of interest in town around wastewater as it relates to affordable housing.
Mhm.
You're all aware of this, so, anything that you can put in the operating budget to either update the 2002 wastewater plan or anything else that you can do, I think would be well received by the rest of the town.
That is included as part of our capital plan.
Really,
Yes, yeah, there is some funds available
for consultant,
for consulting services, yes, part of our capacity. Well,
okay,
we believe
It's
that's
in
what we
there.
have, yeah,
It's in
we
there.
believe
Okay.
we have funds for that. And I also know there may be contributions from the town as well to support such a study.
yes, okay,
But the need is clear
Yeah.
as far as our understanding.
yes.
And there was an article just recently, the Healy administration is being, I saw Dave Cash, the EPA Region 1 administrator, grappling with wastewater challenges and affordable housing. So we're gonna be pushing that button as well.
Good.
Right. Do you have any more commissioners' comments?
Did I hear you, Andrea? Were you asking, what were you asking?
For commissioners' comments about the director's report? Any
Uh,
comments?
I just have one question that goes all the way back to the very first item we dealt with tonight, this afternoon. Is that appropriate? Is this an appropriate time? Because it's for Alan. And that is, what did we commit to, or what did you commit to do in terms of reviewing the sewer rules and regs, as well as the rules and regulations governing water connections as a result of sort of the way we worked out the appeal, the West Concord appeal? What should we expect something from you within the next year?
Oh, yeah, no, I think it's gonna be months, not years. We have an interest to get to revisit the rules and regulations for a number of reasons, but this particular appeal flagged one sort of critical issue, which deals with the ADUs. So we want to get on that one soon. And the other issue is so we have rules and regulations, and then we have design standards that have never formally been adopted by the Public Works Commission. And I am repeating myself, but we've done this for engineering, and there's no reason not to do it for water sewer. And that's where we're going to have the opportunity to provide the commission with the concepts and layouts of utilities that are going to directly relate to an ADU versus accessory, structure and that sort of thing. So it's going to help us all to help, have that clarified. So the commitment is months of,
Okay.
sort of to get that back to you.
If I have my way, Dave, we'll have it wrapped up before the next construction season.
Yeah, that would be our interest, correct?
Okay, great. Okay, thanks. I just wasn't clear about that. Thank you.
Any public comments? Any more public comments? Is there anyone online?
I see Pam. Yes, I can. Yep, there you go. Pam's hand up on me.
There you
Pam.
go.
Yeah, there you go. I think we can hear you. Pam, can you hear us?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, great.
Thanks for recognizing me, Pam Howell, 668 Nersnack Hill Road. First, I really want to thank Steve, I guess, or whoever arranged to have the street cleaner come yesterday. The person worked for really the whole day. I think they started around 8 a.m. and was there till almost dark. So I really appreciate all of the work the person did. I noticed that they scooped up a lot of gravel material, and I wonder if the town kept track of some of that for the contractor to know how much of the material that was put down was also scooped up and thrown away, because I saw several truckloads of it being taken away. The road had deteriorated quite a bit, so I'm sure that's part of the reason the street sweeper was there. And the person made a big difference on our road. It's hard to express how much gravel was on that road. And now it is back to the surface area, and it makes it much clearer where the big crevices are that people are stumbling over. So I also appreciate that you're bringing the contractor back to take a look at that for the safety of our neighborhood and for future projects. I personally went to Hildreth Lane and walked their road. I noticed that the sealer that was placed on the gravel material made a big difference for walking. So I'm encouraged about that direction. And I guess my last comment is something that's, I think Steve mentioned, that it is true, like Nurse Neck Hill is pretty wide. The road itself is fairly wide. And because of all of the gravel on the side of the road, people and trucks, a lot of delivery trucks up here, were driving in the middle of the road consistently because that's where the gravel wasn't kicking up. And so I'm sure that the street sweeper will have made a difference on that. But Mark and I were talking about this yesterday on our walk, and one thing that might be considered on these roads where, you know, there isn't a lot of traffic and they are very wide, to either put a yellow line in the middle of the road, sort of like Strawberry Hill Road has, or those white lines on the side of the road, so that people have something to encourage them to drive in one lane or the other. So those were my comments, but the main one is thank you for cleaning up some of that debris. It's really appreciated by all of us.
All right, that's great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the comments.
Anybody else, Ellen?
Yeah,
I don't see any other hands, virtual audience. I think we're good.
all right. Do we
I
have-
move we adjourn.
all
Second.
right, okay.
Aye.
So, all right, Jeff
Aye.
Parker, James
Aye.
Terry, James
Aye.
Delon, Andrea Sullivan. Aye. All right, we are adjourned.